So how's everyone doing? I'm going to see if I can paint for maybe an hour or so, maybe a couple of hours at most, like an hour and a half on this one. We'll concentrate like right up here because I don't have a lot of time today, so we have to, is there a way to hide chat? No, I'm so sorry, there isn't. I could try and push this up, maybe we can do that. Or I could try and, can I zoom while does that work for everyone? No, we could do that. Is that better? Hola Dani, te amo. Do you think that works better for you guys if I zoom in? So we could do that, because I'm just going to concentrate on this one, on this particular one. So we can do that, and I think that's a little bit easier. I want to also adjust the drawing a little bit on that. Stacy says it's better, so good. I painted this one yesterday, and I painted it on top of my Lannister. Oh God, but I was never comfortable with this painting, so I did this one here. And I'm also going to try out what I did here. Man, you guys can't tell, but I'm going to try out the I put some linen, some like little pieces of linen that I had lying around. I cut them in the shape of the moleskin paper, and I glued them. I spray mounted them onto my paper. That's not showing anything, of course, because I'm zoomed in. But so this is linen. It's actually a lot harder. It gets a lot harder. So I did it on a couple of pages, and we'll see how that goes. It's just some scraps I had, and I figured I would try to glue them on onto the moleskin paper and see how that goes. And I just used a spray mount, not one of those reversible spray mounts or repositionable spray mounts. It's more of like a rubber cement spray mount. So it's there. It's on you would have to tear the paper to try to separate the linen from the page. So you've inspired me to start using oils. Yeah, always. Not to talk crap about other paints, but oil paints are better. I've used them for a little over 20 years, and I just think that they're so versatile. Like there's stuff that you can do in acrylics, you can do in oils. So if given the choice, I would always go for oils. So as always, if this is my center of interest, I'm going to go and try and at least sort of block in the stuff that's on the side, around my center of interest. So since I'm not using medium, I have to really kind of push my my paint around if I want to. So I'm kind of scrubbing the surface here. Remember, oil, there's oil present in your paint. So, and it is a wonderful binder. I've been having this great conversation with Etienne over my messages in Instagram about the qualities of oil as a binder, and it's actually a perfect binder. Binder just meaning that it disperses your pigment evenly and nicely. So if you needed to paint your whole page, oil can actually disperse that pigment, and it does a wonderful job of that. It's very, very crappy in terms of adhesion, though. Oil is not great in terms of adhesion. That's why centuries ago people had to figure out how to help oil adhere to surfaces, and they realized that if you mix it with resin, with a natural resin, like Damar, like the Damar resin, then you would actually help it to stick to other surfaces. So But as a binder, it's very, very good. Again, not the best in terms of adhesion, but you could probably say, well, why don't we use varnish, as a binder, and just ground pigments in varnish, and then paint with varnish. Restorers actually use paint that's ground in varnish, but it's not great at handling. I mean, they use it sort of to glaze ever so slightly over the spots they're restoring, because they really don't want to ruin the painting. They don't want to start interpreting like a lot of the painting, like literally painting over the whole painting again. They just want to retouch everything. So, but handling is one of the most important aspects of a medium also. So mediums can be wonderful, can do wonderful things for paint, but if you can't handle them, then there's no point. So, but again, there's oil in your paint, so we're sort of using that oil so that we can push paint around a little bit. I do want to try. I bought a Sennelier sort of alkyd medium that I want to try, because I had been using liquid, and I trust alkyd mediums. I like them a lot. They're super versatile. They dry really quickly, and the thing is, restorers hate them because liquid actually transforms when it dries. So anything that transforms, like, to give you an idea, like, it's not the same thing chemically, but like acrylic does. If you're painting with acrylics and you leave acrylic paint on your palette, it dries up, and you can't do anything about it except just scraping it off your palette. You can't dissolve that paint. You can't dilute that paint with water again when it dries. Oil is actually reversible. Oil oxidizes, but it never really dries. It just the upper layer of the oil film is the one that dries, but oil underneath keeps sort of moving and it's alive. So that's why you could potentially just take solvent, and if you put, if you could just brush solvent on top of, like, let's say, Titian painting, and you could really wipe it entirely off if you wanted to. You don't ever do that, or do that if you're crazy. But that's what's cool about oils. So restorers actually love the fact that Damar varnish can be lifted, can be dissolved. The thing is, when you dissolve Damar varnish, there's no way you can tell what's varnish and what's paint. Solvent is not this intelligent thing that knows that, oh, okay, I'm just going to pick up varnish. It also picks up layers of paint. That's why there's so many people that are opposed to, like, not restoring in general, but when they change a picture so dramatically. So, what solvents is good for dry oil paint? If you want to take it off your palette, you can just use turpentine. Yeah, just use turpentine. That'll lift it up. You could use paint thinner, but that's like excess. That's just a little too, like, overkill. So that's why there's a ton of people that are opposed, because they know that if you're gonna lift up a varnish layer, you're gonna potentially lift up paint layers. And if you lift up paint layers, then there's nothing you can do about getting them back. So that's what's always very scary about lifting varnish. I would imagine, like Turner, it would be impossible. You know how he would say, like, in the varnishing day, that first day of the exhibit, or that night before of the exhibit, painters would go and varnish their paintings. they would say, there's this story that says that Turner would go and still paint. You know, he would still mix color in his varnish, and he would paint he would still be painting his paintings. It would be impossible to lift up a final layer of varnish without lifting up color in Turner's case. So then the restorer has to have this, you know, he's put it in a situation where he has to, or she has to, reinterpret Turner's painting. And that's when, you know, it doesn't all go to hell, but then you're just pretty much just changing the painting and based on how you interpret it. So that's why I'm a bigger fan of just letting something be. You know, just let it be. If it aged, then let it age, and you know, that's totally fine. I'm trying to. I haven't figured this out yet with this painting, because I was talking about it. What was it? Yesterday, the day before, that I wanted to push saturation on this particular one, but I'm not entirely sure yet. So I'm kind of gauging with my background to see if that would be a good place to go. But I still haven't made up my mind, to be honest. Keep cool. I also cut up one of my brushes today. I'm going to try it out. I had a long flat that I liked, but it was too long, so it was just grabbing my paint really kind of loosely, and I figured I would just give it like a haircut, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. I've never really shaped a brush. A lot of people do that. You just take scissors and you just shape your brush, like reshape your brush. I've never done that, so I did it, and I gave it like a nice kind of point. I don't know if you can see that. Let's put it against the darker. I gave it like a nice sort of, so I made it into a filbert, sort of. But it was a long flat, but I didn't like it, so we'll see. I bought it just to try it out, so. Paintbrush haircuts are dangerous. They go bad so quickly. Unlike regular haircuts. Yeah. The thing is, the hair doesn't grow back, so there's no way to say, well, you know, if you mess it up, then we're totally fine. I don't know. I'm going to try it out. I promise I'll try it out right now and see. And I'll be totally honest. If I messed up, I'll be like, oh God, just buy the shape and size of brush that you want, and don't just shape it yourself. But I'll try it out. It's okay. What I do know is that I want her face to be light, kind of like, not emanating light like one of those Rembrandts, but I really want it to be light. So I have to really kind of control my values surrounding her, and they have to be a little bit, I can push them so they're a little bit darker, just so that I can kind of exaggerate the difference between those darks and that light on her face. Do you always paint the background before you do? Yeah, it's, I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do this, honestly. But I feel like, I've always said this, like, I feel that if you have something that interests you in your painting, if you have an area of interest, like a special area of interest, and you've already made up your mind and you've defined it before you started painting, it's always kind of good to do the like those areas that are going to play like secondary roles, to solve those, so that you can be sure that when you're painting your area of interest, all those other areas are going to be working for, you know, the moment of your painting that you've decided that's going to have like a higher hierarchy. That sounds terrible. Higher hierarchy? That's horrible. So I always think of them as like these spots that are not going to be the focus of your painting, but that have to work. They really have to be resolved. And sometimes we don't think about those areas, and we nominate them as backgrounds. We just put that name, and we say, when in our minds, when we say that, we start believing that they have like a lesser role in our painting. But they're equally as important. They're just not going to be the focal part of our painting. But they have to be solved. They have to be very much so solved. So right now I'm just, I know I could have just kind of sloppily blocked in these shapes of her hair, but I really want to give it some volume and some form. And now I'm going to do her face, but I'm going to start with the shadow also, because I always kind of go for from dark to light in form also. I was always attracted to that part of traditional painting when I started painting. So this is what I wanted to sort of redraw. It's very small. It's a very small change, but I want to drop the eyes just a little bit more. So, and I'm using like a softer brush, that Escoda sort of, what is it, mongoose? I forget what it is. I think it was mongoose brush. Do you recommend, I missed the question, sorry. I'm trying to paint and then I have to kind of peek and look at my phone. So I'm sorry if I can't get to all your questions. So I'm not putting a ton of paint down. I just want to sort of mass in my shadows right now. In the same way, it's really important to mass in your lights. You have to have like a continuous sort of feel for that shadow. And this is a nice example of that sort of flowing concept of light and shadow. In terms of the light, I'm going to do something with her hair, like in a minute, to try and illustrate that. But what I always tell students is that light doesn't care what things are called. And when we usually, or it's a good idea, that when we're painting, in a sort of naturalistic manner, we paint light, and we don't paint just things, but we paint light on top of those things. So we're not thinking of painting a face, but we're painting light that is falling onto a face. And that's a very, very different approach. It sounds just like semantics. It just sounds like we're doing the same thing, but just trying to define it differently. But it actually does put you in a different mindset if you're trying to paint light instead of trying to paint form. If you're trying to paint how light describes form instead of just painting, concentrating on painting form. It is a very, very different, very, very different approach. Because when you're painting light, you actually sort of travel the form in the direction that light is kind of falling onto that form. And that's very, very cool, because you make different sort of choices based on that. You make sacrifices based on that. So so that's kind of cool. I still have to kind of shape her, the contour of her head. Didn't like that one too much when I saw the drawing afterwards. I realized that I had to kind of reshape it a little bit, and I'm still going to shape it with the further painting that I'm going to do. So I'll do that. Then remember, face sometimes we realize it's easy for us to realize that if, let's say light is coming from left to right, to do a light side of the face and then a dark side of the face on this side. But when light falls from, if you have a skylight or if you're outdoors and it comes from above, we don't realize that the face is actually like a ball, and it has to sort of turn into shadow. As soon as the cheekbone turns, it turns into shadow. It's easier for us to turn the face this way, to understand how the face turns this way, but it's really hard for us to try to understand that the face also turns that way. And that's very, very important. So keep that in mind. So this is shadow, but it's a lot more transparent. Transparent in terms of the color that I'm using, not in terms of the quality of the paint, but just it's a very, very sort of transparent. There's still light coming into that shadow, but it's serving as shadow. So I have to be really, really sensitive to this color. On the other side, it's not as pronounced as that one. I was doing this. I was dragging my dry brush, just to illustrate what I was saying. But on this side, I have to be a little more sensitive because it's not as. It's just like a half step value lighter, in that side. But we'll still work on that later on. Lower lip is in light. Don't think of a lip as a closed up shape. Think of it more as a change in pigment, but it's still kind of skin. It's still part of your face. It still has like that skin quality to it. So don't think of it as a really enclosed shape. So the eyes, remember that they're part of a socket. So kind of drop that sort of tone in there, just so you don't feel the attraction to just putting lights in there that don't belong there, or that have to be solved, but they're very, very subtle. So, and remember that there's always transition, like a transition tone between the hair and the skull, like the skin that's covering your skull. There's always like a transition. Like it doesn't just. It's not like if you had hair plugs that you can tell that there's an artificial like line, like a limit between your skin and when the hair begins to grow. Like natural hair has like a very soft transition. So always try to do that instead of just making that hairline really contrasted between the hair and the skin. And this is something that I wanted to do, and I'll show you. It's very subtle, but it's very, very important. It's super important. See, light is coming from up here, and it's traveling through the hair onto her face, onto the portrait. So I know that hair is going this way, like the shape of the strokes that I would use to solve that hair would go almost horizontally, right? But since light is traveling in that direction, it's never a bad idea to just drag that stroke and say, well, first there's light kind of traveling through, and then there's going to be the description of hair. And that way you sort of, you're binding everything together through light. So if you do that, that's kind of nice. The same thing kind of happens, and I'm going to push this. It's not quite there, but I'm going to push it just to illustrate it. Same thing with your mouth. When you're doing a mouth, always feel like there's light traveling through that upper lip that's probably going to be darker down to the lower lip. So you can do that very softly there, but yeah. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to use my shaped, let's see if this kind of sucks, if my haircut works. Hopefully it does. And we'll use this. Oh, it's not sucking. It's kind of interesting. Kind of scrubby in here. I'm feeling it while I'm mixing my paint. So yeah, it's kind of nice. We'll see. We'll see how it puts paint down. Maybe it wasn't a total disaster. Watch me say that, and in 2 seconds I'm like, oh, Jesus, I'm an idiot. Well, yeah, I'm a little bit of an idiot. It's kind of soft still, which is what I was trying to fix, the fact that it's long filberts and long flats have that. I think they're meant to put paint really softly on top of your surface, but I think they need more. You probably need more medium when you mix that paint, or you need to be working on like a second layer of paint or something like that for it to work like better, for it to work properly. Because I'm sure they have a use, like a very particular use, but it's just not too. It just wasn't making a lot of sense with my painting, so with the way I approach painting. So that's the thing. Something can be there are tools that can be absolutely perfect for a particular use, but if they don't match up your painting, your sensibility when you paint, because we all paint very differently, then sometimes tools are wasted on us. So that happens to me a lot with brushes. Like there's beautiful brushes out there, but I tend to have like a heavy hand, and if I don't feel like I'm capable of really, really sort of understanding the use of that tool and using it to its full potential, then it doesn't quite make sense for me. So, but this one's actually nice. It's kind of scruffy. It doesn't have like a specific shape to it when it puts paint down, and I kind of like that regular shape. So I like it. It's coming. It kind of works. So right now, even though and we'll do this again, right? So we're going to travel with the light down that socket, and it helps because we had already put some paint down there. So it's kind of dragging that paint that we had put down, and it's giving it. It's sort of like tainting it. So it's not going to be clean paint when you drag it down, but it's gonna work nicely because still it's gonna give that sense that light is traveling, but it's gonna pick up some of that paint from underneath, and it'll be closer to the value that you actually need. So. And many times I feel more comfortable just what color for flesh, not shadow. I hate the word flesh. I know what you're asking. I hate the word flesh, but what color did I mix for my lights? I'm using my sort of high chroma palette, which is titanium white, that lemon, cadmium yellow, cad red medium, alizarin, cobalt blue, and raw umber. So what I'm doing is mixing cad lemon yellow and that alizarin because I want a cooler mix for that light. And if it's too saturated, I'll tone it down with raw umber. So that's what I'm using for that light. I don't like to say flesh, because when we say flesh, 99% of the times when people say flesh, they're referring to Caucasian, like white flesh on light that comes from above. That's what we're many times referring to. So I don't like to generalize flesh as that. I think we make a ton of mistakes if we start thinking of flesh as that. So I just see color, color that is dependent on lighting conditions. That's all my mind can see. So I think it's better if we think about it that way. I love how you say I don't know. My English was kind of formal when I was in school because I went to school here in Bogota, they taught us a bunch of classes in English, but my conversational English is all New York. So I was bred in New York. So I'm sorry, but that's how it is. Buenos días. ¿Quiénes han sido tus mayores referentes en la pintura, en el arte? Desde España, saludos. Mis profesores, de pronto, los mayores, las personas que más me influenciaron seguramente en mi vida como pintor, mis profesores. Eso sí, no tengo duda de eso. Porque pues yo no conocía la pintura hasta que mis profesores me introdujeron hacia la pintura. Entonces, el mayor impacto pues lo tuvieron ellos dos, que son Max Ginsberg y Steven Asel. Entonces, pero pintores que disfruto hoy en día, que sigo disfrutando, muchísimos. Seguramente como desde los tradicionales de la historia del arte, grandísimos pintores, hasta contemporáneos. Ahora estaba viendo lo que está haciendo Ruprecht van Kaufmann, la exposición que hizo ahora reciente. Increíble, está increíble. Trying to figure out what I want to do next, but I was just saying that I was looking at Ruprecht von Kaufmann's latest pieces, and I love all his work. Period. So let's start with that. I don't want to sound like I'm like there's a caveat to what I'm about to say, but I love his work. I think he's one of the best painters right now. But I love his huge compositions that have a very strange, distorted narrative to them are amazing. But I love the ones that are just guys sitting in a chair and that's it. He's incredible. He's really, really incredible. If you don't know his work, look him up. Social media is very, very strange because he is 20 times the painter that I'll ever be. He's far better than me, and trust me, like us painters, we know when the place that we sort of occupy in terms of like the art world, and he is a far, far, far better painter than I will ever be, and yet he's not. In social media, he's not popular, and he has only like a couple of thousand followers, and that's just, I guess that's just like the way it is. But it's just funny to me that a painter that's that good, in the eyes of like how we interpret being sort of well known and famous today, and the impact we have on other people, he will be considered less of a painter just because he has less sort of a following. So it's kind of weird. Painter you're referring to, Ruprecht? Oh, there you go. Zursoif? Zursoif? I don't know. Yes, Zursoif. I don't know. How do you say that, Zurso? He spelled it correctly. But yeah, look him up, please. He is a hell of a painter. So maybe you don't like exactly what he does, but in terms of painting, just incredible skills. So I went with a warmer, like shadow. I think I had it a little too neutral, so I wanted to be a little warmer here. So when I say warmer, my mind just says, okay, what do I have warm in my palette? How can I say warm in my palette? And that's how you should always think. Like, if I want to state something as being warmer, how can I state it through my palette, through the color choices that I have put down in my palette? And the ones that I have in my palettes that are warm Well, the warmest one is obviously the cad red. So I just make that a little more dominant in the mix and in my mixture of paint. So that's sort of how I think. It's always like if I'm thinking of hue and I say, okay, this has to be more yellow or more green or more blue or whatever, then I go to my palette and say, well, how can I say that? If I have to think about temperature, I do the exact same thing. I go to my palette and I say, well, what are my options to say cooler? What are my options to say warmer? And that's what I do. What's your palette today? I already said it. It's titanium white, yellow, cadmium lemon yellow, cad red medium, alizarin, cobalt blue light, and raw umber. So I sort of bounce. I'm a really terrible painter in terms of trying to be like academic about the way I, in terms of how I go about how I travel my painting, because I get easily distracted with things that I don't feel are working. And if I don't solve those things almost immediately, as soon as I see them, I get anxious about them. It bugs me. So I jump through my painting quite a lot, and I hope that doesn't bother anyone. But that's just the way I paint. It also helps me constantly sort of revise the wholeness of the image, instead of concentrating on like little parts of the painting. So hola, ¿dirías que hay diferencias entre un pintor, artista y un ilustrador? Pues solo en términos del objetivo de la imagen que están resolviendo, pero de resto no, para nada. Pues de los artistas que más respeto, que más me gustan de toda la historia del arte, hay muchos ilustradores. Entonces no lo entiendo así. Pero de nuevo, lo que cambia es como el objetivo de la imagen, la intención detrás de la imagen. Pero pues nada más. No lo hace menos artista, digamos, el que la imagen tenga un objetivo de reproducción, o el que la imagen haya tenido una dirección de arte particular, no hace que el artista sea menos artista. Muchas veces la gente piensa que se sacrifican como individualidades que tienen que estar presentes en la ejecución de una obra de arte porque cuando se hace una ilustración, pero no quiere decir absolutamente nada. Pues para mí no hay ninguna diferencia, solo son dos funciones distintas de un artista y ya, no es más. You can watch it again, these stories, yeah. With a transparent acrylic medium, yeah, I prepare my paper with a transparent acrylic medium, so the oil so the paper won't suck all your oil, and the oil won't affect your paper, years from now. You're clearly not a slave to your under-sketch, as you seem to paint with fear of losing your initial. No, not at all. No, not at all. The whole point of, as I said, like the whole point of drawing, for me at least in my mind, is to investigate and to try and understand certain things, and it's just that what a drawing is to me, when it's underneath this painting, it's just evidence of me attempting to have understood what I was trying to solve at that moment. So in that sense, it still obviously has immense value for me because, like I said, it's the mark of that, of those minutes or hours that I spent trying to figure something out. So a drawing is not valuable to me in the sense that it is precious and I can't revise it or I can't work on top of it. No, that's not a quality of drawing that I'm attracted to. I'm far more attracted to the one that has been historically so important for us artists, which is studying. It's a tool to study with and to try and understand and interpret things through. So I would much rather emphasize that quality and not be sort of subjected to it. Doesn't the paint pick up the graphite of the pencil? No, because it's been sealed. I drew it with pencil, and then I slopped on top some acrylic medium. So that's why there's a grayish sort of tone to this drawing because it lifted up a lot of the graphite. But that's been sealed already underneath there, so no, I don't worry about that. Antonio Lopez, for example, does do graphite marks on top of his painting. He'll do a paint layer, and then he'll revise his drawing, because he revises his drawing constantly with graphite marks, and even more so when he's doing his architectural pieces, like urban landscapes and stuff. And those kind of show through. I don't know if you guys have done that, but when we put paint on top, they may cover the graphite marks initially, but eventually they sort of start kind of pushing through the paint, which is really amazing that graphite has that ability. But yeah, it happens. So Lopez doesn't care. He doesn't really care about that. So it's not a big concern for him. He actually likes those drawing marks. He has that. There's a school that. Well, not a school, but Coldstream, William Coldstream. Is it William Coldstream? Yeah, I think so. He was Uglo's teacher, and he used to do all these he used to leave all these drawing marks within the painting, and Uglo picked that up and ran with it. He really made it part of the manner of his manner of work. And Lopez was very aware of both of them, of Coldstream and Uglo. So he totally also picked that up. That's not something that's very much like Lopez. I mean, this is not a battle in terms of who's original and who's not. It's just that's. I mean, if you have to say who was the person who actually originally did that, it was Coldstream. So. But it's really nice leaving those drawing marks. It's just like reminders in a way. It's almost like leaving a breadcrumb, like a trail, while you're painting. So you can tell yourself, okay, how does my shoulder line up with my ear? And then you put a mark, or I don't know. It's just reference marks, reference points, all throughout all your painting. So draw first, then seal paper with papel. I never painted with oils on paper. Yeah, it's totally fine. Trust me, they remain on the surface a little bit more. If you're painting on canvas, you usually have to. Canvas will actually soak in a lot of the oil and a lot of the paint, so you have to scrub in your paints a little bit more. You have to use a little more paint when you're painting on canvas, but it's the same thing. I mean, you have to adapt. It's not exactly the same thing. Obviously, paint doesn't behave exactly the same, but it's still oil paint, so it's not like it changes dramatically from one surface to another. Cheers from. Oh God, I couldn't read. I'm sorry. Sorry. So the light in this one wasn't wasn't very strange because it's the light that we're used to looking at. So it wasn't. It's not hard to block in a head when you have like this sort of natural light coming from above, because that's like traditional lighting. But I always tell people, don't get too used to like one sort of lighting. Always kind of push yourself to see if you can solve the same form with different sorts of lighting. That's always a great idea. How many grams? I think it's 185. 185. What happened to your project? The one where you combine teaching and the book you do. I think, you know how I said that regardless of if I could find if I could find a plausible way to do it here in Colombia, regardless of me being able to find it or not, I was still going to do it. So I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to charge for it. So I've already thought about it, and what we're going to do is try and get started a YouTube channel where we can do all the stuff that I was saying. And that way people can have access to all the stuff, all the videos. And, you know, I'd much rather happily produce like this book once it's done, because I also feel kind of cheap just asking you guys for money right now and then telling you, well, the book is going to be done as soon as I finish this sketchbook. And the truth is, I'd much rather finish the sketchbook and then tell you guys, okay, it's going to be done. And when it gets print, you know, it takes only like a couple of, maybe like 2 months to get fully printed and shipped. So I'd much rather do that the right way, because quite frankly, it's very, very. It's been so difficult for me trying to find alternatives here in Bogota to these wonderful things that nobody realizes that they are insanely complicated when you don't live in one of these big countries with big economies. So I'm gonna have to do the I'm gonna have to do the YouTube channel, which is totally cool, which is totally fine. But and you know, if I do it like that, then I don't have a lot of pressure because you know, I'm putting it out there and I can learn while I'm doing it, you know? So I'm not charging you guys for it initially, so I can just do them and then say, okay, if it's not working out, it's still kind of, you know, it's still free. So, you know, cut me some slack. But the production aspect of it is the one I'm really sort of curious and concerned about. So, and I want to do that right. So, but like I said, I think I'm gonna try this weekend to make a video, a very simple video though, but just to see if we can get things kind of rolling and see how that goes. But I know that I don't have experience doing that, so, and I want to do it by myself, so that's the other thing. When will this channel start? Great, thanks. I think in a couple of weeks. Yeah, in a couple of weeks. And it'll be the same thing, I'll do sort of challenges and exercises, and we can all do them, and I'll show you guys how I interpreted those challenges and exercises. So, somebody talked about Patreon. Yeah, Patreon is awesome, but it's also the same problem. It's just I have to find a way so that money can come into Colombia. And I'm willing to be totally, legit about it and pay my taxes and do everything, the right way. It's just that there's a lot of, strange laws in Colombia that make it very, very hard for that money to just come in like it would come into the U.S. or to, the U.K. or to Germany or to Italy or to all these other places that are open to this. To these business sort of designs. So, anyways, PayPal. Yeah, there's no PayPal. We can pay through PayPal in Colombia, but we can't receive money through PayPal in Colombia. So, I know it sounds like really backwards, but yep, that's how it is. The world is like that. So. Didn't know that. Sí, Johan ahí está. Sí, Johan Barrios, who's a terrific painter. He's very aware. He's also Colombian. He's very, very aware of how hard it is to do a lot of the things that are very, very simple for a lot of people outside, in the rest of the world. Not the rest of the world. There's a lot of countries like ours, but for us, it's not that easy. So that's totally fine. We can work around it. So glad to see you here, Shelley. Yes, very glad to see you here, Shelley. Also, I'm very glad. So that's looking nice. I'm happy because there's a lot of sense of form very quickly on that little head. So that's always my concern. If it doesn't feel like it's three-dimensional very quickly, then I kind of feel like I'm losing something, like I wasn't able to get something quite right. So I'm always kind of pushing myself to see if I can say that very, very, very kind of quickly. Can you storefront like Gumroad in Colombia? Again, it's the hardest thing is to have people actually send you money from overseas. As soon as the money enters into a Colombian bank account, they have a lot of restrictions for that. So, and it's not quite easy. So I'm still trying to find a way to do it because YouTube is a perfect way to share knowledge and to share experiences and to have a community, a sense of community. That's awesome. All those things I love, and that's the reason I've been doing all these little live sessions. But in terms of like making a business, like if you want something that's more organized and there's so many alternatives right now in the art world where you can be the owner of your business and you can control like your creative output. And unfortunately, that's all those things that you can have access through, like crowd funding projects or stuff like Patreon that people finance through PayPal or through, all those things that are really, really wonderful. They're still not legislated here in Colombia, so we have to be a little more patient, I guess. So I made that light a little too big. Gracias, Master, con las uñas, viejo Nico. No, todo bien, Johan. Un pintorzazo, oiga. Muy, muy chéveres las pinturas que está haciendo. Nicolás, no está de más decirte, cuenta conmigo, así si te puedo ayudar en algo. No, todo bien, Johan. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Sí, pues que me reciba plata, entonces sí me la mande. En maletas. No, todo bien, todo bien. He uses moleskin notebook, so. Oh, Ignat is here. Ignat is a hell of a painter, too. A real treat to watch you work. What brushes are you using? I'm using, let's see, a Da Vinci. It was a long flat, and I transformed it into a scruffy mid-size filbert, and I gave it a haircut. I'm also using these Escoda brushes, Rustico, which are very nice, and I would love for them to send me a ton of these brushes, and I will very gladly promote them blindly because they are very, very good. So, si me está escuchando Escoda, tengo toda la disposición para patrocinarlos, pero pues mándenme todos los pinceles que quieran. Yo sería feliz de pintar con ellos todo el tiempo, pero sí, necesito muchos pinceles, entonces por favor, muchas gracias. A ver luego si nos dice en su página. No habla español y yo escribiendo en inglés. Sí, yo hablo en español. Pero es que en inglés la grandísima mayoría de mis seguidores hablan inglés. Entonces, pues inglés desafortunadamente o afortunadamente la gran mayoría de nosotros lo entiende, entonces pues lo utilizamos para hablarle a la gran mayoría. Yo te hablo por el interno. No, no, Johan, estaba molestando, todo bien, todo bien. Do you ever use oil mediums when you paint? I did. I've used oil mediums. I probably used them for not tens of years, but I've been gladly saying that I've been painting for over 20 years, and that's true. That's true. So in those 20 years, I think I've used as many mediums as you can. If I would challenge you guys to ask me if I have used a certain medium, and I'll be completely honest about it, and I'll tell you guys if I've used it. But I have used as many mediums as I can in paint, because I've realized that one aspect of what I love about painting is the this cooking aspect of painting. There's a chemistry to it, and it's really, really attractive to me. And I've always wanted to understand, instead of just using recipes, I've always wanted to understand what things are for. Like, why did humanity, say, well, we need oil? Why did humanity then say, well, we need varnish? We need a resin? Why were all these decisions made in the first place? And what's the purpose of those mediums? Because it's kind of dumb if you just blindly follow a recipe and you don't really understand why you're using it. And that's how I painted in school. I remember, they would tell us, for example, Max would say, use half equal parts terps and linseed oil. And use that, and as soon as you're done, then just varnish your painting and you're done. And I'd be like, what? Why? Why does that work? And it's not that Max wouldn't share his knowledge. He's one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. But it's just that there was this sense of, oh, just use it. Just shut up and use it. That's how it is. And I was very, not disappointed, but I never liked that. I have never liked just somebody telling me, oh, just do this because it works. And then me blindly following, those orders. I've never been that sort of person. So I've always wanted to sort of push myself and to see if I can understand why people would say that I should use something. So in that search for understanding why, you make a ton of bad decisions and a ton of stupid decisions, but you learn through your experience. I would tell everybody, every single person out there, there are right ways to paint in terms of the technical aspects of painting. There are right ways to paint. That's not even debatable. And that's not debatable because it's very objective, because it's chemistry. There's an aspect to painting that is just it's just very, very objective. So it's not a matter of interpreting technique. It is what it is. But what pretty much happened during the latter half of the 20th century was that people said, oh, F all this, I'm just going to try things out, because technique is also, proper technique is also restricting. So people said, well, it's not letting me do this that I want to do, so I'm going to consciously sacrifice technique for expression, and that was super cool. I actually liked that. I love the part where painting has this history where humanity, where all of us have taught ourselves how to do this properly. But I also love that we can tell ourselves, you know what?